Is FX Audio still the king of the budget segment? Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. What we have here today is a DAC/headphone amp, and it comes from the FX Audio. And if you're not familiar with the company, they had few pretty successful, like dirty cheap products, like DAC X6 for example and X6 MK2. Both of these were below 100 bucks. And I believe that both of these were unbeaten at that price point. And especially in my country, those were hugely popular and successful, because for like 75, that was the original X6, and 85, 80, something like that, X6 MK2, they were really hard to beat. Pretty decent DACs with really powerful amps that can drive basically anything at a dirty cheap price. But this time we have a luxury product costing 215, I believe, and it looks like something that came out of the futuristic 70s movie. It's actually cute and it feels decent in person. It's quite lightweight, but this body is aluminum and it's really sturdy. Actually, the whole thing, front panel, back panel, and volume knob, everything is made out of aluminum and feels really solid. But important thing is that on the back you have three very common digital inputs, meaning USB, coaxial SPDIF, and optical SPDIF. That said, USB is not a big USB-B port, but it's actually small USB-C type. I prefer seeing regular big-sized ones, but this is still okay. Definitely better than micro USB, as some small form devices are offering these days. And when it comes to outputs, you have set of RCA, that's analog output. It can be fixed, it can be volume controlled, meaning it can serve as a preamp basically. And in the front you can see a headphone output, 6.35 millimeters. Again, single-ended, so pretty straightforward, old school connectivity. But I'll quickly turn it on so you can see the display that actually still feels like something that came out of 70s futuristic movie. You also get a remote in the box. It's plastic, it's the same one as you would get with topping and SMSL devices. You cannot be like all over the place. Point at it, it works. Oh yeah, it also has a Bluetooth connection. You can mount Bluetooth antenna here, connect your music wirelessly. If you wish to do so, definitely you'll lose some sound quality in doing that. It can suffer more or less depending on how good Bluetooth implementation is, but it does suffer compared to wired connection. And regarding the specs, it has Saber DAC chip, and it has reasonable amount of power, that it's not huge, but it's reasonable on its headphone output. What? You want more? Go Google it. What am I, like some free information service here? Okay, jokes aside, I don't want to take much of your time talking about specs, because that's really not what's important. What is important is the sound. So let's talk about it. So DAC M1 sounds pretty good. And as you would expect from a Saber chip around this price point, it does lean heavily on qualities such as clarity, really clean and crisp tones. It has great focus and great control. Overall crispness, clarity, and etching of the edges on this device is probably class leading at this price point. Edges are so crisp and clean and also energetic. There's a lot of energy from everything that you hear, like every drum strike or every string pluck sounds really focused and really energetic. It's razor sharp. And starting with the bass line, it has great control and really good texture retrieval. It's probably one of the best controlled and most energetic bass lines in this price category. Mid-range is Again, really crisp, but it does have enough of fullness and enough of energy not to sound depleted or laid back or thin in any way. Actually, vocals sound upfront and they're energetic and they're really there, dense and well focused. And same goes for anything else. For example, I listened to some really nice acoustic songs, but it's really dynamic. I'll put it on the screen. Main vocal is huge and energetic. Bass strikes hard and with density. And guitar sounds so energetic and lively and upfront. So I was really positively surprised by that. In the upper frequencies, it's not as extended as some competitors. It does not have the same amount of air and tiny atmospheric cues just everywhere around the instruments. It's not as lit up as some of other DACs, but it's also not rolled off in any way. It's just not the best when it comes to high frequency extension. But moving to dynamics, as you can expect, because I mentioned those energetic edges and plucks and everything, dynamics is really great. It does sound lively and really dynamic. Soundstage, quite normal for Sabre DACs around this price point, is more on a focused and dense side. Everything mostly happens in between your speakers, but with great separation and great pinpointing. But there's not really much width and height and depth to talk about. AK DACs are a little bit better in terms of those qualities, while R2Rs are even better. But things that it does well does really, really well, and I truly enjoyed it. But there is one thing that I wanted to mention, and that's stopping me from giving this DAC my full recommendation. And that's upper mid-range that has a lot of presence and crispness and clarity, but it's also slightly aggressive. And there's certain sharpness and clawiness to some vocals, especially female ones. And sometimes they're just a little bit more sibilance than I would like. If that part was tamed just a little bit, and trust me, I tried. I browsed through different filters. There are like 7 of them, and I tried them all. Some of them sound a little bit different, but no matter which one you choose, you always get that slight aggressiveness and lispiness in upper mid-range. And in some systems, it might not be that noticeable, but if you have something that's already slightly aggressive in that same spectrum part, it might be a little bit edgy for your taste. And moving to the headphone output, it does have all of these same qualities when it comes to tonality, dynamics, really energetic sound, but again, slightly on that aggressive side in the upper mid-range part. So when I paired it to tonally rich and not too forward, not too bright sounding headphones, I did have a great fun. For example, Virm 1 planars. Pretty good combination, pretty good sound. But let's say that you put biodynamic headphones that are quite edgy and bright and connect them to this one. Oh, I don't like that combination. So it sounds pretty darn good with headphones that are kinda neutral or laid back or slightly warmer. But if you have aggressive ones, and trust me, a lot of headphones that are praised all over the web are actually really aggressive sounding. And I'm always mentioning biodynamics, like DT770, 880, 990, Pro or no Pro. All of these are really aggressively tuned in this upper mid-range and lower highs. Really, really aggressive. But as I mentioned, for everything that's actually neutral, too laid back and slightly warmer, darker, this one is a great partner. And when it comes to power, it's decent. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's reasonable. You can power most of the headphones It will not be enough for power-hungry beasts, but most of the models out there with decent sensitivity that are not some huge load to a headphone amp, this will work just fine. Now let's quickly move through a few comparisons. So if you're coming from something cheaper, like maybe FX's own DAC X6 or X6 MK2, this one definitely sounds more revealing, more energetic. It even has more tonal richness compared to X6 MK2, for example, that's on a dry side of things. This one is fuller, more energetic sounding, especially goes for the mid-range, that's just more full-bodied. A very similar thing if you would compare it to a budget DAC offerings. For example, Topping E30 sounds a little bit smoother but more flat and less resolving. It's both spatially and dynamically more flat. This one is simply more striking with its sound. It has more punch, more dynamics, and it's livelier sounding. More focused too, with greater density, but slightly aggressive in these parts that I mentioned. But maybe the biggest competitor to DAC M1 would be Log's GD30, and this is the newer version that I reviewed just recently, but this one is $250, that's really similarly priced. It also has a Sabre DAC, it also sounds very focused, precise and detailed, and just as M1 here, it does have headphone output too, and it's of a decent power, not great, but not weak by any means also. So in all possible ways, these two go head to head. And it's a really tough choice. I'm not kidding you, it's a really tough choice. Personally, I did like M1 just a little bit more, because it is really slightly more energetic and it somehow feels more focused. Log GD30, on the other hand, has slightly softer bassline, and lower mid-range is probably not forward sounding, not as kicky and slammy, but highest spectrum feels more extended, and those highest frequencies do have slightly more details in them, slightly more revealing, and air surrounding instruments and empty space in the sound stage is revealed, is heard a little bit better through Log GD30 here. So that said, it's basically up to your own taste. Do you prefer slightly warmer bassline with a touch laid back mid-range and more extended highs? Or do you prefer something that's more mid-range focused, that's more focused sounding in general and more energetic, but also a touch more aggressive and forward sounding and with a touch less air in those highest frequencies? And it was also really difficult to decide for me too, but finally I did prefer M1 just a little bit, because it brought some more energy and liveliness to the music, and I really liked that. And it also did that at a slightly lower price. But as I mentioned, if you feel like what I've described for D30 is something that you would like more, you should definitely go with that one. This is a matter of preference more than it is of a quality. And with that, I would like to make a conclusion here that FX Audio keeps making surprisingly good products for really low price. Now, admittedly, M1 is not as dirty cheap as some of other FX Audio products, but that's okay. If you don't have this kind of budget, they do still have great offering at lower price points. But here, around $200 US, this one is definitely one of the best DAC amp combos that I've heard. And if not for that slight aggressiveness in the upper mid-range section, I would be raving about this being the best buy at the market right now. But with it, and it's a reality, It's just really good, but it does have to match with the rest of your equipment so that part of its tonality does not become bothersome. But with just a little bit care with that and with pairing, I think we have a winner on our hands. And going forward, I'll probably be keeping this as the one to beat around 200 US dollars. That would be all for today, guys. If you liked the video, then click that button, share it with your friends, help this channel grow and spread its wings. Also consider becoming a patron. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.